Okay, so my topic is the music production using virtual orchestra case of the Lost Tale Symphony. First, let me explain what the Lost Tale Symphony is. Oopsie, how can I change the slide? Okay. The Lost Tale Symphony was composed for my doctoral thesis, and it has 9 episodic movements, and in which each movement represents different themes, such as the character themes, the time, and so on. It had the live performance at Music Hall Art and Culture Building, Chulalongkorn, back in 2017. And then back then I had a recording of the live performance, but the recording of that time did not get through due to some problems. For example, like tempo and as live performance itself, sometimes we cannot fix the tempo or like the computer because human being playing. But when you listen to it from the recording, you will notice every time that the music is played. So I could not really release that. And then some sound or instrument that's like get really messed up. Some notes and some chords will play wrongly, and unexpected sound like the coughing or the phone ringing from the audience. And of course, the lastly is the cost of the production. The whole orchestra performance of that time costed about $11,000 US, and if I need to have another recording session, it would cost me another several $1,000s more, in which a bit too much in my case. So I had to come up with the idea that is it possible to reduce the cost of the producing an album, orchestral album, without costing that much. So let me introduce something. So basically the 3 roles that I have to take in order to do so is that first one is a writer, and the second is a producer and the engineer. So the writer is more the creative artist that we have to write. We write the music, we write the lyrics, we write the arrangement. And producer, we just have to make sure that the music that we get is what we want. In my case, I am both client and producer at the same time. So I have to make sure that I get the music that I really want. And lastly, the engineer. The engineer just record and make sure that the sound is the right one. So as a result of this, I use Logic Pro 10 as the digital audio workstation, and then I use the East West Quantum Leap Hollywood Orchestra as the sound patch for this. The process of making this can be divided into 3 stages. So pre-production, production, and post-production. So the pre-production include choosing the sound patch and track setting. So in the first example, in the flute, the first one, as you can see from there, we have 2 flutes. We need at least to have 3 different tracks for this one. One is the flute 1 legato and 2 flute 2 legatos, and the third track would be staccato. So we have to record them one by one. By dividing the tracks, we can just adjust like what sound do we want to make it sound more louder than the other. For example, I want the top note to be louder than the second note, so I can just adjust the volume later on. But if we play 2 notes at the same time in one track, we may not be able to adjust in that detail. The second example on violin 1 passage, as you can see that they are legato, but in this case, I still need to divide into 2 tracks anyway. So the first track is the violin 1 legato, and the second track is violin 1 legato runs for this 7-note group here. So the runs, the runs patch is just like, it's a function of it's like, it will allow the note to be played fast. That's it. The second, oh, by the way, the name up here, NV, VB, MV, and RR means non-vibrato, vibrato, moto, vibrato, and round robin. The round robin means that this patch, the patch that you have the round robin means the patch, like if you have the note, the same notes playing, the notes will be played differently according to this order. Another thing that to be set is the sound envelope for this one. The sound envelope is like the attack, decay, sustain, and release. The attack is like the first note, how the note is sound, how you make the first note, you hit the key, boom, that's the attack. And then the first drop right here is the decay. Then the sustain is how note can be held. And then the release is how you lift the finger, how you lift the finger and how sound stops. So this, in this case, this is like they stop slowly a bit. So this sound envelope is the default setting for string tremolo. This passage of violin 1, violin 2, of course, as you can see, this is the string tremolo with the dynamic of piano, in which soft. According to the last slide on this slide, is that the attack is quite strong. This is default for tremolo. It's quite strong. It's kind of hard to play the piano here. It's kind of hard to adjust because the attack is so strong. So I have to delay the attack to be further delay a bit, so that we can produce the softer sound. So in this case, I have to adjust like according to the tracks. Like if I have the one passage with piano, I have to adjust like this. And if I have another passage in which tremolo again, but with fortissimo, I will have to have another track with different envelope setting, because the envelope there will apply for the whole tracks. Once all tracks are set, so we can go for the production. The production is simple. We just do the MIDI recording with modulation, velocity, and quantization. Okay, the notes there is the trombone, solo trombone passage for the introduction of one of the pieces there, and then the lower picture is how the MIDI track looks like. So as you can see that all MIDI notes, they are on the right place right now, because I did the quantization. The quantization moved all the notes to be on the right place. The color, as you can see there, they are velocity. The velocity is the term defining how hard the notes are played. So the orange color, as you can see from there, means higher velocity, and lower color is more like blue. There is very low velocity, it's like lower note there. So I have to adjust something a bit. So for example, this note has lower velocity because I don't want this high note to sound skippy a bit in terms of texture. And also the yellow line here is modulation. In classical term, usually modulation is more like we modulate to another key, we go to another key and so on. But in terms of music production, modulation is we just change the texture of the sound. So the texture of the sound slightly changed from 93 up to 116. So it doesn't really change that much, but the small change anyway. And once all the recording are done, so the recording is we have to record like every single track one by one. So we can divide it by section, or we can just do the whole track from beginning to the end and so on. So once the recordings are done, we can just move to the post-production. The post-production is more like the file conversion from MIDI to audio, panning, EQ, reverb, bus channel, and volume automation, and so on. So the file conversion for this case is that from MIDI to audio, MIDI requires a lot of CPU. And sometimes if we have, like, for example, 50 tracks or 60 tracks on the computer, sometimes the CPU is overloaded and it's very hard for me to work on. So I have to convert the file from MIDI to audio to make the CPU, to reduce the load of the CPU. Once all tracks are converted to audio, we just open a new project and put everything back here according to the tracks there. I try not to combine a flute 1 and flute 2 flute staccato all in one track. So I try to separate them as much as I can so that I can edit them later. So flute 1, flute 2, and flute staccato is the same group of instruments. So I put them into the bus channel. The bus channel is more like virtual wire that put them in the same channel so that I can adjust the same effect, the same panning. So for example, the bus 1 from the flute section is we go to AUX1. So I just adjust everything right there and then set the panning So that the panning of this one, all flutes we have the same panning and have the same channel EQ. About the panning, this is the normal chart of the orchestral setup, and usually sometimes people said that, okay, we have to think like we are the conductor, so violin 1 should be on the far left and cello should be on the far right. But I try to think like an audience, so the audience should sit way below right here, so the violin 1 should be about left and cello should be about right. According to this, so violin 1 is 30 to the left and then cello 30 to the right. So it's not far left and far right. So it would sound a bit more realistic in this way. And once all thing has set up, so next one should be the volume automation. The volume automation is more like you adjust the volume of each track. Sometime in the same passage, we can adjust the volume here and there a bit so that the sound is very consistent and goes naturally, because according to recording, sometimes we record this passage first and then this passage later on. Sometimes the things are like unexpected in terms of recording, so we can adjust the volume here. Once all tracks are being volume automated, we just go on to the reverb. The reverb basically is like we give the depth and dimension of the sound to make it more realistic, like an echo and so on. In this case, since there are 9 episodic movements, I have to carefully choose the reverb setting so that all 9 tracks have the same reverb setting, so that when you listen to the whole album, the whole 9 tracks, it should sound like they are being recorded from the same session, from the same orchestra, and from the same recording hall. So some reverb doesn't work with some track, while it works with some tracks. So I have to carefully choose the reverb setting and try to set them as much as I can, so that like all 9 tracks have the same like consistent sound. So in conclusion, so the whole symphony was recorded and produced with Logic Pro 10 and the sound patch from East West Quantum Leap, because the default sound patch is not detailed enough, so I have to find another plugin. The tools and technique can be applied to produce other works by yourself or by someone else's work, so it's quite useful here. And of course, the whole music, including all 9 episodic movements, can be listened at the SoundCloud here and from the link here. Let me show you some of the example a bit. Stop sharing, share another screen. Okay, this is produced by Logic Pro 10. Okay, thank you for listening. Is there any question?
Great, thank you. ขอบคุณครับอาจารย์สิทธิ์ do we have any comments or question from the audience? I guess it's still early, in the morning. Well, I will ask then about the editing process. You said I'm a little bit confused about you said modulations and the compare with the volume automation. What's the difference between the two?
Modulation and volume automation.
Yes.
Okay. Modulation, we have to do it during the MIDI recording because it changed the texture of the sound. especially like brass instrument, they have like for example, the horn can go from very soft and sweet sounds and go to majestic sounds. So we can change it by setting up the modulation. But volume automation is more like we just adjust the volume without adjusting the sound. So the sounds can be majestic and the volume can be low in this case.
I see. Great, great. So you actually have to go inside and like adjust the graph yourself.
Right.
It seems like a long and tedious process.
Very long. It's been 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, what about you? You said like program can be overload. Like is that have to do with like your computer capacity or what is that?
Well, I had my computer custom made, so I'm kind of proud of my computer. And the thing is, the media recording is like all information are set into MIDI, and then if we try to adjust all the MIDI sounds, for example, 50 tracks or 60 tracks, it can overload the CPU and stop the software the software can stop working. Actually, even the process of converting the file from MIDI to audio already caused me enough trouble for this one, because like when the software just read the whole thing, they read the whole 50 tracks, even though you mute off them, just get one track solo, but they still read all of the tracks. So when I did the conversion, I have to erase some of the tracks, open a new project, duplicate the tracks, and then erase some of the tracks. Just to make, like, for example, 50 tracks, I erase like 40 to make it 10. And then I convert one by one. And then I repeat it for like this one for like 5 or 6 times in one piece.
So many nights of like non-sleep, right? Okay, well, what could you give like recommendation for those who are interested in like doing like this virtual orchestra, like how for example like how many RAM do they need for their computers or like hard disk or like how powerful should it be?
Well, I cannot really recommend this one, but let me just share you my spec then.
Okay.
My spec is like I have 16 gigabyte RAM, which is the highest as much as my Mac can upgrade. And then I have Core i7.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have like 500 gigabyte of memory, memory storage. And then, but actually for the sound patch, I use the external hard disk for the sound patch.
Like SSD hard disk, right?
Right, SSD hard disk, because the sound patch was about like 1 terabyte big. So I cannot put them on my Mac.
Right. Well, it's yeah. It's your computer seems powerful enough already, but it can give us a problem also, huh?
Also, yes.
Well, great. Any questions or comments? Other comments? Well, I guess not. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chansit, for your presentation. I really enjoy your music.
Thank you.
Okay.